Okay guys, it's time to rank the worst movies of 2018. I'm gonna give you 10 of them. Let's do this. What's up guys? This is the final countdown of 2018 I'm gonna give you. This is gonna be the worst. First off, I'm gonna dedicate this video to my latest Patreon, Marcus Christoph. If you are of a certain tier, then you can get a video dedicated to you, which is what I'm doing for him. Let me just tell you guys too, I don't seek out bad movies. I really don't. So these are some stinkers in here. Don't get me wrong. I've saw some bad movies this year, but the problem with bad movies for me is that it's hard for these movies to stay in my head after I leave. So I might be a little vague about some of these movies because if I'm being honest with you, I don't really remember everything about them. You know, they were just that bad for me. But anyway, I'm gonna give you my 10 worst of the year. Let's jump right into it. And by the way, before I get into this, I did a top 10 worst horror movies of the year and best horror movies of the year. So I'll put a card right here for those videos. But these are gonna be, it's gonna be some horror and some non-horror because I wanted to shine a light on some of the non-horror movies that I thought were complete crap. So I did a little shifting around so I could put a few more of those non-horror ones in here for you. But anyway, number 10 is Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald. This was a competently directed film, I think. But I'm a big fan of the Harry Potter series. And it all comes down to the characters. I love all the characters in that franchise. This is the opposite for me. I just cannot get invested in any of these characters in this franchise. A lot of the special effects don't really serve the story as well for me. I know there are fans of this continuing franchise, but you know, for me, the buck stopped at Deathly Hallows Part 2, you know, and I tried to get into these movies, but I just couldn't do it. I think Johnny Depp was pretty decent in the role, but overall, I just cannot get into this franchise. So as shallow as that is, that's my reasoning for not liking Crimes of Grindelwald. Okay, I'm happy to give this one right here, and I'll probably get some dislikes for it, but screw it. Number 9 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. You know what? I am not the biggest Marvel guy because they do lean a little bit too far on comedy. For the most part, they get it right with the comedy. You know, these are fun movies, but it's got to be funny. And for me, Ant-Man and the Wasp, it wasn't funny at all. It was just a lot of flat humor in this thing. And really, this came out right after Infinity War. And I just wasn't having a good time with this movie at all. You know, I really was just waiting for that last scene. I don't think this one is even better than the first Ant-Man, and the first Ant-Man's like way down at the bottom. I'm just not a big fan of how these movies are handled, I guess. I don't mind the character that much. And funny enough, Ant-Man was one of the coolest parts of Civil War. But I think when you put him on his own in a movie, it's just not that interesting. At least for me, it's not. So that's why he makes my number 9. Number 8 is going to be a worthless remake, Tomb Raider. I will give props to Alicia Vikander. I think she looks the role. I think she's physically fit for the role. You know, I can tell she put a lot of work into it, but overall this was just a case of a forgettable story, a forgettable villain, and really a lot of running. That's pretty much what she did through most of this movie. The action sequences were kind of bland and boring. I much preferred the Tomb Raider with Angelina Jolie actually in the first movie. Cradle of Life is not good at all. But this one, it just didn't grab me. There was nothing special about it whatsoever. Nobody was really asking for a Tomb Raider remake. And you know, if you're gonna give a remake that everybody's not asking for it, then you better bring something special to the table. And there was nothing special about this movie at all. Number 6 is going to be The Meg. Talk about shitty characters. That's what The Meg was. They were trying to go for just a full-on comedy, Jaws type of movie, but all the comedy in this was just completely flat. It was just really bad writing. One thing that I hated about this movie was Ruby Rose, because Ruby Rose pretty much plays Ruby Rose in every freaking movie. And there's one scene where she's supposed to be crying, and I can't help but gut laugh. I'm laughing my ass off because it's so fake looking. You know, this is a lot of that like forced emotion in a movie that's like 95% comedy. And then, okay, all that stuff aside, you got this gigantic shark that's like 4 times the size of Jaws, even bigger. So you better give me something fun with him, and I got nothing fun with the shark. The end scene where he's coming through this big crowd of people on the beach, much like the first Jaws. That shark would have gobbled up like 100 people in his mouth, and I think one person might have died, and there was like no bloodshed. This movie was a complete waste of time. Number 6 is going to be The Nun. This was a complete CGI shitfest. Valak was the most interesting character by far in The Conjuring Part 2, which I like that movie, by the way. So we were promised this movie that centers around Valak, and I was like, yeah, give me that. That's gonna be awesome. But then something happened. Valak pretty much was a CGI creation. Her face looked ridiculous. There were so many jump scares in this movie. Some nice atmosphere, I'll give it that. But overall, I think they could have went practical with the look of Valak, and it could have been creepy. But, even the trailer was completely lame. You saw that coming a mile away with Valak, like, coming across the hallway. I mean, it was just really stupid. So, overall, I didn't like this movie at all, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. Okay, number 5, Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom. I never, ever thought that a Jurassic Park movie would be in my bottom 5 of the year. I liked Jurassic World, the previous movie. I think I was caught up in the hype of it. It does have a great ending, but there are some problems in that movie. But this one was all over the place. And it was just completely cliche, like so many recycled ideas from Jurassic Park movies. There's so many similarities to The Lost World for this movie. And The Lost World is just so much better on every level. But really, it came down to the characters in this movie and the believability. You got that one scene where you got the Indoraptor, and it's coming towards the little girl in the bed, and we all know that it's not even going to hurt the little girl at all. And in The Lost World, they had the balls to do that. If you remember at the very beginning of the movie, you had the little girl and all those little, I can't remember the name of the dinosaur, but what did they do? They killed the little girl. They don't do any of that in this one. It's so cliche. I think the Indoraptor is cool looking, and I am curious about the next movie. But to me, this was just a bridge. That's all this movie was, and it didn't really do anything for me. Oh, by the way, the character Franklin, easily most annoying character of the entire year. This movie was already bad, but he made this movie just insufferable. Number 4 is a movie that did not need to happen, Peppermint. Jennifer Garner is in great shape in this movie, but this is a movie that has been done so many times before. This is a movie in a year where we had better revenge movies. We had Upgrade, we had Mandy, we had Revenge. All 3 of those movies are fantastic. This one brought nothing new to the table whatsoever, and it had a lot of those scenes where you're like, nope, that would never happen. And I'm usually pretty forgiving with movies, with stories. But if it's just completely blatantly stupid, then I can't forgive it. And I was constantly making fun of this movie throughout. Number 3, Truth or Dare. Truth or Dare, of course, was in my my bottom 10 horror movies. And I just had to keep it on there just so I could foot stomp how stupid this movie was and how it had an interesting premise. But the number one scare that was meant to freak the audience out, it ultimately is the biggest joke of the movie, the stupid dirt face. Every time that face was presented on screen, it completely took me out of the movie. I could not take the movie seriously whatsoever. There are some that might say that the dirt face didn't bother me, and you know what? You're wrong for even thinking that. It's stupid. I love you, Cecil. Anyway, yeah, so that puts Truth or Dare at number 3. Number 2 is a movie that I just saw like a couple weeks ago, Holmes and Watson. I almost put this movie at number 1 because this movie was so bad. And it's a shame because this was the return of John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell. I love them in Step Brothers. I love them in I love them in Step Brothers. And I love them in Talladega Nights. But this movie, from the trailer, I knew putting them in like a Sherlock Holmes type of movie. First off, I'm not the biggest fan of Sherlock Holmes to begin with. And then to put these 2 characters in there that pretty much all they do is tell dick and fart jokes. And this is one of those movies that when I walked out of the theater, pretty much everybody was in agreement of the shit fest that this movie was. And it stayed at like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes for quite a while. Not that that matters, but if you're 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's not that good. And then, of course, number 1, Slender Man. Slender Man is easily the worst movie of the year. It should have focused on the actual story of what happened. To me, that's kind of chilling. But instead, they did what they did with the Villisca Murders movie, is they tried to do, you know, this fictional story based off of the Slender Man and make the Slender Man, you know, this like evil entity. But they didn't do anything with Slender Man as a character, really. You know, all he did was just kind of stand there in the woods. And then you got these stupid kids that make every wrong decision that you could think of. Their reactions to events that are going on around them were completely preposterous. And it's just another one of those movies where I was just like, why is this character doing this? This makes no sense whatsoever. Why are they going back into the woods? I was almost pulling my hair out by the time this movie was over. It was so dumb and so stupid, and I couldn't wait to get it off my screen. Oh God, we did it, guys. So that's it. That's my bottom 10 of the year of 2018. Looking forward to jumping into 2019 for some new reviews for you guys. Post in the comments your worst 10 of the year. Any of these movies that you liked that I put in my list, I'm sure there are, but I'm looking forward to getting into a nice discussion with you guys about it. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free For All Fridays. If you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.